We've already established that this woman is Israel. Some people think it's the church, but it says that the woman gave birth to the male child. You trying to tell me that the church gave birth to Jesus? Last time I checked, it's the other way around, right? Jesus gave birth to the church. If anything, that's what Christians have been taught in their Sunday school lessons, is that the church's birthday is at Pentecost, which means it's the church that came second, it's Jesus that came first. But clearly John says the woman came first and Jesus comes second in this little story here. So don't get confused, people. The woman is Israel. So let's just go in that direction. So the woman gives birth to the male child. But notice what John says in verse 14. The two wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that what? She could fly into the wilderness to her place where what? She was nourished for a time, times and half a time away from the presence of the serpent. So stop. If this what we're reading about is safe to say that this is inside the 70th week, then at the very least, John is describing half of the 70th week. Could be the first half, could be the second half. But the point is still shown that this woman is given a measure of protection away from the wrath of the serpent, away from his persecution. Indeed, verse 15, and the serpent hurled water out of his mouth after the woman, so that he might cause her to be swept away with the flood. Verse 16, but the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and drank up the river which the dragon had hurled out of his mouth. Now watch what it says. So the dragon was enraged with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her children who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. I believe that rest of their offspring, or rest of her children, that's the church, which means the woman is Israel. But here's my point. Whether you think this happens at the beginning of the week where it runs this 3.5 years and culminates in the middle, or whether you think it starts at the midpoint of the week like I do, and this 3.5 years runs through to the end. Either way, we don't have a rapture. What we have is exactly what the text says. Verse 14, I'll read it again. But the two wings of the great eagle were given to the woman so that she could fly into heaven and be raptured away from the wrath of Satan, away from the tribulation. She could fly into heaven and be ushered into the presence of Jesus. That's not what it says. It says she was given the two wings of the great eagle. Let me just highlight number 14. She was given the two wings of the great eagle that were given to the woman so that she could fly where? Into the wilderness, to her place where she was nourished for a time, times and half a time. So here's my point. Going back to my chart, even if you're a classic post-tribber and you want to say that there's no clear distinction between the church and Israel and they endure everything together, where does it say that the church flees into the wilderness for 3.5 years and is protected from the brunt of the wrath of Satan? If you're trying to tell me, Ariel, it's there where you just read it, you just saw it. The woman runs into the desert and is protected from the serpent. Is that worldwide? That can't be. That's clearly Israel-centric, or someplace that there's a desert, which kind of matches what Yeshua said in Matthew, where he said, when you see the abomination of desolation, then you need to get up and get out, flee Judea, right? Run into the wilderness. That kind of goes together. Likewise, we have Isaiah 26, which tells God telling Israel, hide in your place for a little while my indignation runs its course, meaning that could be God saying to Israel that the wrath of Satan and my wrath are the same thing. That's one way we could say that passage. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think even classic post-tribbers would have to agree that at that moment when this woman flees into the wilderness away from the wrath of Satan and she's protected and Satan even tries to go after her, right? It's clearly an earthly scene. He pours out water out of his mouth, but the earth helps the woman. It's clearly an earth scene. And the reason I'm being very emphatic in my description here is that this is a moment in time in John's sequence where at the very least, you ready for it? Here's the bombshell I've been building up to. Israel and the church are two separate entities for that brief moment, because the church isn't protected for 3.5 years from the wrath of Satan, right? Tell me I'm right. As a pre-tribber, you're trying to tell me, as a post-tribber, you're trying to tell me that the church gets protected from Satan for 3.5 years? I think it's only Israel that gets protected there. She's the woman. We already established hermeneutically that she's a woman. So here's my point. Highlighting what we pre-rapture say, even though we say that there's a distinction between Israel and the church on some level, we, like the post-tribbers, also believe that dispensationalism is a very weak theology. So please don't mistakenly lump we pre-wrathers in with the dispensational pre-tribbers. At least not this guy. I can't speak for Marv Rosenthal. He said that he was a dispensationalist. I'm not faulting him for that. I'm not saying that that makes him any less deficient or makes him any more deficient or less accurate in his theology. I'm just saying that I don't think that you need to be a dispensationalist to be, you don't have to be, how can I say it? You don't have to be a dispensationalist to hold to pre-wrath, nor is there any necessity to bring classic dispensational theology into a pre-wrath model. I myself am not a dispensationalist. I believe that the church and Israel endure a lot together. Indeed, I believe that the church is grafted in, remnant church, Israel is grafted into elect Israel at the remnant level. So let's do this. Let's basically conclude this particular slide. Let's see. Give me a moment. I've got a note from one of my Skype participants, and I want to see what it has to say. The woman, give me a moment. I'm waiting for Skype to participate with me so I can see what he had to say there. I want to add it to my study. Okay, here we go. Wow. The woman is which Israel? Can't define her as the unredeemed Israel either. The woman is which Israel? Okay, good. He's bringing the question, which Israel is the woman? All right, good point there. Let's go back to Revelation 12. The woman who gave birth to the male child is national Israel, to answer your question. But it's obviously not it's not an unbelieving family that gave birth to Jesus, right? Mary and Joseph would be representative of remnant Israel. However, when we talk about from the large, I'm zooming out using the Old Testament, from the largest perspective that I can utilize, national Israel always belongs to, remnant Israel always belongs to national Israel. They're not two separate entities. They're not two separate groups. They're one nested within the other. So when God looks at the entire earth, he has separated Israel as a family out from the other nations. So we realize that separation. But within this separated family called Israel, he once again separates the remnant of Israel out in a unique covenant way from large national Israel. And so in so doing, what I believe is that we have an Israel within Israel, and then we have, in other words, remnant Israel is inside of national Israel, and national Israel is still here on earth, but it's clearly that there's a separation between the nations and Israel at that level, and there's a separation in terms of relationship with God through his son Messiah at the remnant level. So where does Jesus' birth come in? Well, at a broad sense, Jesus is an Israelite, meaning he's a part of national Israel, but Jesus himself, being the very Son of God, right, God incarnate, Jesus is obviously the federal head of remnant Israel. But he has not given up on national Israel, which means Jesus will one day come and rescue national Israel from her blindness. He will open up her eyes and cause her to embrace him one final time, bringing her into a right relationship with his Father. So when we look at the Old Testament, we cannot say that God has given up on Israel any more than we could say that Jesus has given up on Israel. And so when we look at passages like Revelation chapter 12, and I go back up to the beginning, and I didn't mean to park out on this, but based on the my student's question, and he posted another comment, I'll read it in a moment. A great sign appeared in heaven in verse 1, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant, she cried out, being in labor and in pain to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, verse 3, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads were 7 crowns, and his tail swept away a third of the stars of heaven and hurled them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she gave birth, he might devour her child. And then we pick up verse 5, and she gave birth to a son, a male who's going to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared by God so that there she would be nourished for 1260 days. I don't see how I could make this woman out to be the church. However, I do say that this woman is remnant Israel. However, this remnant woman here is also a player in this story that's not and here's the point I'm trying to make. This woman is a player in the story that at this point in time in John's vision is not described as someone who's raptured. That's really the only point I was trying to bring up by bringing up the woman's identity is just to say that she's not the church. Whether you say the woman is remnant Israel or whether you say the woman is national Israel, or if you do say that it is a church, either way, you have to say that the woman flees into the wilderness. That's my point. It doesn't say that the woman flees into the arms of Jesus. It doesn't say the woman flees into heaven. It doesn't say the woman is raptured. It doesn't say the woman is resurrected. It doesn't give us any type of detail that would cause us to understand that this is a rapture passage. I don't see anything in Revelation chapter 12 that's talking about a resurrection and a rapture. On the contrary, I see a player who's on Earth, who's fleeing from point A on planet Earth to point B on planet Earth. And that's all I'm trying to get at is that unless I'm reading something wrong, unless there's something hidden between the lines, there's not a rapture going on here, folks. It's not a rapture. It's not a resurrection or anything that would cause someone to go from being physically dead to being transformed, or something that would cause a physical person to be transformed from planet Earth and to be snatched up into the air, or any such language. There's nothing that I see going on here that suggests that that's what we're talking about. So that's why I think that this is Israel. Is it remnant Israel? Yes. Is it national Israel? Yes. Right? You hear me saying both of those. But only remnant Israel truly probably fits this passage best, because it's this protection that's going to allow her to actually meet Yeshua near the end of the 70th week. What happens to the rest of national Israel, you might ask? If it's this woman that flees into the wilderness, can all of Israel flee into the wilderness? Not likely. Plus, those who aren't in the wilderness can't flee into the wilderness, right? Those Jews who live in other parts of the world who are not believers but do go through the 70th week of Daniel and enter into the midpoint of the week when the tribulation begins, the Great Tribulation. What are they going to do? Are they going to flee into the wilderness? If you're in America, if you're a Jew listening to this right now and you don't believe in Jesus, are you going to flee into the wilderness at the midpoint of the week? I don't imagine that that's what you'll be able to do. Where's the wilderness, right? We can't just spiritualize everything. So quite naturally, the way I see this playing out is that this is a description of those who live in Israel, of which there is a wilderness to the south of Jerusalem, like Edom, Moab, Dead Sea area, Jordan, maybe, things like that. They're able to flee from the physical persecution that's going to take place at that moment, and they need this protection in the wilderness because they're not going to be raptured yet. Indeed, even the 144,000 that are sealed in Revelation chapter 7 are not described as being taken up into heaven at that moment. And indeed, there's a point there that they are 144,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel, meaning they are a remnant of Israel, but they're not described as those from the nations. They are those from Israel's ethnic group that can identify their tribal lineage. Even at least John identified them. All right. My study buddy in the chat room says can't be just national Israel. Can't be, meaning, yeah, obviously, if I understand what you're saying, this group that's fleeing into the wilderness can't just be national Israel. The woman's children are those who keep the commandments and the testimony of Jesus, unless you believe that national Israel has all accepted Jesus by this time. No, right. So he's bringing up a good point and he's helping me to, by the way, thank you. You're helping me to clarify what I mean by who the woman is, because it says the rest of her offspring. But we can speak of Israel's having believing offspring. I mean, this could happen even at a physical level. You can have a mom and dad who are unbelievers and they're Jewish, and they can have a child who's a believer. I mean, isn't that child their offspring? Yeah. So it depends on what you mean by offspring there. But yes, I understand the verse. When we scroll down to the bottom, I understand the natural, the spiritual sense of when it says the dragon was enraged with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her children. I think that, again, it's no secret that remnant Jews are part of national Jews. Remnant Israel is a part of national Israel. That's my point. We all, there's only one olive tree. Can I say that? There's only one olive tree. There are not two olive trees that God recognizes are in covenant with him. The wild olive trees are not in covenant with God. To be sure, in Romans 11, Paul describes Gentiles as leaving the wild olive trees and joining the single covenant olive tree. Who's the olive tree? I believe we could make a strong case that the olive tree is the family of Abraham. But wait a minute, the family of Abraham exists on two levels, both the national Israel part and the remnant Israel part. They're both the olive tree, but within that single family of Israel known as the olive tree, Abraham's offspring, we have a remnant that is separated and distinct because of our faith in Jesus. Thus, verse 17, so the dragon was enraged with the woman. I would read this as Israel. Israel proper, right? Because Satan's going to persecute you whether you're... Here's the thing, and I'm not trying to argue with my study buddy in the Skype room with me, but here's the thing that I'm challenging those who are listening to my commentary who don't quite follow remnant theology. Here's the thing. When Satan persecutes, when Satan pours out his wrath against the elect of God one day, do you think he's going to distinguish between who's a Messianic Jew versus who's a non-Messianic Jew? You think he's going to know the difference? You think he's going to excuse national Israel from persecution, but only persecute the remnant? I don't think that he will. I think he'll just go after anyone who looks like a Jew and walks like a Jew. For him, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, then it is a duck. It's kind of like the same principle that Hitler was going on. In Hitler's day, when he gassed up all the Jews, he didn't care whether you were a Messianic Jew or a non-Messianic Jew. He just cared that you were Jewish. He was playing the ethnic card. I think Antichrist, following out on the heels of Satan, Antichrist falling on the heels of the Hitlers before him, the Antichrists before him, the Jew haters before him, the Hamans and the Antiochus Epiphanes and things like that. I think that the Antichrist is probably just going to, and here it says dragon, right? It doesn't even say the Antichrist. I think he's just going to go after Israel, period. He's going to turn on Israel. But here's the part that must be understood, that must be inferred from the passage, even though it's not stated directly. Those in Israel who take the mark are going to receive a measured amount of protection. It's not stated here in this passage, but it is stated in other passages about all those who take the mark essentially will receive whatever provision the Antichrist is meting out in that day. Indeed, why take the mark if you're just going to lose your life anyway? The point of taking the mark is so that you can buy and eat, so that you can buy and sell, that you can eat and drink, so that you can live, which means you're showing that you truly believe in a source other than God when you take the mark. Because God says, don't take the mark. Don't take the mark and just wait on me to protect you or to provide for you or lose your life for me. But either way, don't take the mark. So when we talk about the dragon enraged with the woman, it doesn't say why he was enraged with the woman, but I think we can infer that he's enraged with her simply because he realizes that she is God's elect and that she is being protected by God by having the earth help her, by the fact that she's able to flee successfully into the wilderness and run away from him, and that enrages him, by the fact that she gave birth to a male child and he couldn't stop it, by the fact that he tried to destroy the male child and he failed. He tried to destroy her and he failed. So he's got this rage on multiple levels. He's enraged with the woman, and he goes off, yes, like my study buddy mentioned, he goes off to make war with the rest of her children who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Jesus. This is unmistakably Christian Jews, and or we could say there's some Christian Gentiles in there as well, because remnant Israel is both Christian, Jew, and Gentile. That is remnant Israel. However, when we're talking about those who are living in the land, we're probably talking about predominantly a remnant Israel scenario. Because, again, unless I'm wrong here, we don't need the Bible to tell a Christians worldwide flee into the wilderness to be protected from the wrath of Satan. That's not the picture that we're given. The entire Bible doesn't kind of move in that direction. Instead, what the Bible tells us, and I'm probably going to close with this, what the Bible is giving us by way of eschatological events is that, hey, church, when Satan comes after you with great wrath, just don't take the mark. Stand your ground. Don't flee into the wilderness. I mean, if you're in Israel, flee. If you can, that'd be great. But otherwise, wherever you're at in the world and you find yourself under persecution, and it will be a worldwide tribulation, once that takes place, just stand your ground, right? Meaning, don't recapitulate. Don't give in to Satan. Don't take the mark. Don't jump ship. Don't disavow. Don't lose your loyalty. That's what I mean, stand your ground for the truth. That's what I mean by stand your ground. Because you need to be ready to die for Messiah. That's the truth that we'll be facing as Christians when that time comes. Indeed, when Jesus warned his disciples in Matthew and in Mark and in Luke, they're going to, I'll just show you this. Don't take my word for it. Matthew, starting in verse 9, I believe. They will hand you over to tribulation and kill you. You'll be hated of all nations because of my name. And at the time, many will fall away and they'll betray one another, hate one another. Many false prophets will rise up and mislead many. I'm in verse 12 now. Because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will become cold. The point is, let me back up. I suppose I could have backed up to verse 4. In verse 5, many will come on my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will meet a lot of people. You will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not alarmed. These things must take place. No, I didn't really need to go there. I could have pulled in the Mark and Luke passages, but the point I'm trying to go towards, and I'm closing with this, is that Jesus warns his disciples to basically brace yourselves for the bad stuff that's coming. They're going to kill you. They're going to hand you over to tribulation and kill you. If all Christians worldwide were able to flee from the wrath of Satan when it's being poured out that day, then I guess we wouldn't need all the warnings about them being able to kill us, because it seems to me, and unless I'm reading this wrong, in verse 17 of Revelation 12 again, so the dragon was enraged with its woman and went off to make war with the rest of her children, right? If I back up to verse 16... it says the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened his mouth and drank up the river which the dragon had hurled out of his mouth. Meaning the woman is able to escape. This flight that she takes at this time is, by all measures, for the most part, successful. Am I right? Or am I reading that wrong? She flies into the wilderness. She's nourished for times and half a times. For away, it says even in verse 14, away from the presence of the serpent. She's somehow able to escape his hand to some degree. And it's this escape in verse 14 at the very end that is also adding to his rage in verse 17. So he raged with a woman and did what? It's like he abandons his pursuit of her and he goes off to make war with the rest of her children, who by implication are not able to be protected, or were not in a state of having a wilderness experience where they could be protected. He's able to go off and make war with them for the simple fact that, as far as I could tell, they aren't part of the remnant that gets protected by the wilderness for 3.5 years. So he's able to go off and make war with them. And we read in other parts of the Bible, not just the New Testament, but the Old Testament as well, that he's able to make war with the elect of God and overcome them and wear us out and to beat us down. And we know in Revelation chapter 6, at the fourth and fifth seals, that there's this great martyrdom. So when taken as a whole, it seems that there's only a small group of national Israelites that actually, at the time that they flee, I don't know if they are believers or not. They could be believers. The text doesn't say they are, but we do know that the rest of her children are believers. It just doesn't say that the woman itself are all remnant. They could not. I mean, they flee into the wilderness and Jesus has to go down there and eventually witness to them. Maybe they flee just because they have common sense. But we could look at this in time. There's certainly some more details here that I do want to focus on, but that was basically a side rabbit. Let me close with this. I've gone over my time allotted for this particular section, but let me close by bringing up this idea that the resurrection of the dead, and we're going to have to work on this more as well, but just by way of my chart, so I can stop at a point where I'm finished with the colored parts, right? The resurrection of the dead. The green part, which is the post-tribbers, they said that the resurrection happens at the second coming alongside the rapture, both of which happen at the end of the 7-year tribulation. And so in their classic fashion, if you look at the chart, their second coming and resurrection are the same event near the end of the 70th week. And so that's when their resurrection must happen. It's in conjunction with their rapture. By comparison, when we look at the blue cell over on the right side, this is the Prewrath perspective of the resurrection of the dead. It also does happen at the rapture. We hold that they are the same event. The resurrection and the rapture are the same event, but they happen, or specifically the resurrection, it happens before the wrath of God is poured out, both of which happen at least 5 months before the ending of the 70th week of Daniel. So what we do is we move it up in terms of chronology on the chart. So for us, it's right here. The rapture and the resurrection are here, but notice it's the rapture and the resurrection that cut short that separate the great tribulation from the day of the Lord. So that's my point, is that yes, they're simultaneous, they're the same event, just like the post-tribbers say, but they are not simultaneously at the same time, they're not on the same chronological place on the 70th week of Daniel that the post-tribbers like to imagine. That's a distinction between the two of us. Again, I'm willing to work with post-tribbers and trying to more accurately chart where on the 70th week we can ascertain this great event known as rapture/resurrection takes place. I'm willing to move it closer to the middle. I'm willing to slide it closer to the end. I don't know exactly when it is. Going back to that little chart, let me show you just this version of the chart. By placing the rapture here, like we do, we which is right here, separating right between the Great Tribulation and the Day of the Lord, right? So there's rapture. We Prewrathers are not saying that it's exactly halfway through the second 3.5 years. We actually don't know how close to the midpoint it is, or how close to the end of the week it is. We're not certain. All we do know is that we need at least 5 months for the wrath of God to run its course, possibly a year. Those are some of the things we're more ready to agree on. But let's do this. I've gone over. We're going to park the study here. We'll pick this up next week. And I'll finish this. I think I can finish this next week, because all that's left is basically recapping key similarities, key differences, and a conclusion. All right, so that's what we're going to do next week. But that'll do it for Eschatology, a biblical study of end-time events.